have been broadcasting the events of the People's Convention all day long. We are pleased and delighted now to be joined by the one and only international man of mystery and just all around good guy, Jack Posobiec, and his co-author, Joshua. How do you say that last name?
Lisec.
Lisec? Okay. Lisec. Joshua, if you pull that microphone a little closer to you. Jack, you're the hardest working man in show business this weekend.
Well, I've been doing a lot of interviews today. What can I say? This book is really the hottest release of the entire summer. People are asking me for it. They've been coming up to me here since I've been here since 9 in the morning doing interviews, talking about this thing, and people have not stopped asking me for copies of UNHUMANS, saying, where can I get UNHUMANS? I need you to sign this UNHUMANS. It's been incredible. The responses are incredible. And it's really the fact of the matter that people are activated. They're feeling completely activated here in this center. And I think one of the reasons is because there's a general sense that we're winning for once, that we're actually winning.
I think that's true. Now tell me, I want to talk to you about some other things, but what is UNHUMANS about?
Sure. So UNHUMANS is, we were doing this podcast series on the history of communism on my show, and we were looking at different countries, China, France, Russia, Spain, and doing sort of case studies and, make a nice episode for people. And what we discovered, almost completely by accident, like most discoveries are, was a system. And a system that actually applied to each of those countries that I just mentioned, all around the world, different places, different times, different locations, different people, and yet the system was the same over and over and over to infiltrate, to destabilize, and to subvert nations, and specifically by targeting the foundations of their culture and the foundations of their civilization in order to pave the way for full-on communist takeover. And then when we worked together with Joshua to put this all in, and he was the one that really broke down the steps of the system, and then we jointly came up with a counter system to respond to it. So we go through all of those countries, but the final chapter in the countries case series is January 6th. 2021. And what we call the Fedsurrection hoax.
The Fedsurrection.
That really was used as an entrapment on patriots and has been used to usher in the regime under which we now live. And I don't know if you realize this, but the room that we're standing in now, yes, it's called the Huntington Cobo Center now, but in 2020...
I know it well.
This was the TCF Center.
Dude, this is where they put the newspapers up over the glass.
This is the very
You and I watched this all... We all watched it live on TV.
We've returned to the scene of the crime.
Jack, you really are an imposing figure in person, I got to say. You look like a international man of mystery. But Joshua looks like a scholar. So how did you two hook up? Tell us the story. How did the book come together?
Kind of had a mutual friend.
Yes, in my day job, I'm a professional ghostwriter. I work with a lot of patriots, investors, philanthropists, entrepreneurs, and in the literary space, I regulate, hey, we could do a book. When you can do it with this person, this person, this person. And it turns out that when I saw Chronicles of Revolution, the Human Events Daily series, I said to Jack, Jack, did you see my movie? A couple of years ago, as a side project, I was executive producer of a documentary about very little known communist history, because we all know about right-wing extremist movements throughout history, but the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, the Spanish Civil War, these periods of history that are proto-communist or communist revolutions that the typical American, even someone on the right, doesn't know the whole story about, or they seem as like things that happened a while ago that have no bearing or relevance today. And it turns out that that's not the case, that there is precedent for what is currently taking place in Western civilization, and we realize that there is a system for what they do, and there's also a counter system.
So I want to talk to you about the counter system. Most Americans don't know there were Mensheviks and Bolsheviks.
Yep.
Were it not for Woodrow Wilson and the equivalent of, $700 million today, Lenin may die in Berlin, an outcast of Russian society.
And Trotsky in Canada.
Right, and most people don't know this simple, basic history. That's how good they have been at rewriting. They say to the victor go the spoils. Well, you get to write the history, right, when you win. So does the UNHUMANS walk us through this part of the history? Because I'm interested also in hearing. So there's a counter, a solution to this. Well, we all know what you and I know what the solution is. Here's the counter. That's the counter. That's the solution.
Amen.
I just held up the rosary. That's a weapon in our arsenal. But there are other weapons out there. So what do you say to people that go like, we already know all the history of the communism? Oh yeah, you ever heard of the Venona Papers?
The Verona Papers are in the book.
Yes.
And so what we do is it isn't a history book. It is a history book, but it isn't a book, an extensive history book and it's not meant to be a comprehensive, full-on read of any of these revolutions. But what it is, it's a case study by case study book wherein you learn how each of these applications of the system, all of these stages of the system, have been applied systematically over time to each of these instances, and then how we can disrupt it. And oh, by the way, each chapter, of course, ties back into the thing that we're living through right now, which we refer to as an irregular revolution. Because I get asked this question all the time. They'll say, Posobiec, you're up there on the show, you're on Twitter, it's all hyperbole, you're exaggerating again, you're going off steam. And
dude, you were a beast on Twitter.
I don't write that. Somebody else writes all that. That's not me. That's some other guy who does that.
Well, that guy's a beast.
Yeah, he's good. I like him too. And they'll say, why is it though that you can walk down the street and we're not faced with a civil war? You can go to the store and buy a cup of coffee, and you can live your life. And I say that's true, but consider this, and this is what we learn from military studies. Warfare today in the 21st century is nowhere near the same as it was 200 years ago or 250 years ago when all this got started.
That's right.
And so if the generations of warfare, first generation, for the third generation, we're probably now in fifth generation warfare if you look at what's going on in Ukraine and on the battlefield. So why would we believe that revolutions also operate the same way they did in the past? And so what we argue is that we are currently in a sort of fifth generation warfare type irregular revolution. And the irregular revolution is one that's waged on these little pieces of glass that we carry in our pockets everywhere. It's waged in, for lack of a better term, virtual space or cyberspace.
Right.
But then it also periodically has kinetic manifestations. When we were writing the book, we talked mostly about the summer of 2020, but as I'm not sure if we mentioned it, but the campus in the spring of 2024, the campus manifestations were once again the irregular revolution rearing its ugly head.
So you work for Human Events. You work with Ian Miles Chong. And I don't know if you know into the history of Human Events, but I had the great pleasure.
80 years this year.
One of my star moments, and I've been at this since 1993. One of the star moments in my broadcasting career was, and Ann Coulter helped me. She got this for me. I got to interview M. Stanton Evans, and I interviewed him about his book, Blacklisted by History, which opened my eyes. I'm like, who knew Tail Gunner Joe McCarthy was this hero, not this villain? That's how complete this revolution is.
Joshua, do we mention Tail Gunner Joe at all in the book?
No, we mentioned that he was a well-known patriot from the
Wisconsin.
The great state of Wisconsin. Yes. Tail Gunner Joe comes out very well in this book, and as we go through it, I was going to pass to Joshua, but it's just one chapter of the many chapters of our recent history, because of course the question is, Joshua, is it true that no one saw this coming? No one saw the infiltration, the subversion? Nobody saw the destabilization? Could any American patriot hero have stood up and rung the bell?
There's a saying that the winners write the history, but that's not exactly the case 100% of the time. Communists always write the history, whether they're the winners or the losers of it. And so the Spanish Civil War, the communists were defeated, and yet it's their version of history that has been recorded.
Well, they had all the best writers. They had Hemingway, they had Orwell, even though he eventually kind of renounces it, but they did have a lot of the best writers.
Yes. Part of every revolution is to repurpose another military term, operational preparation of the environment. This is how do you stack the odds in your favor before you launch your attack.
Okay.
And this is done in...
You pre-position your assets, right?
Yes.
Is that what it's in the military terms, right?
This is in war. This is in information war, total war. And so
it's also shaping of the environment.
Okay.
And one of those is the psychological environment. meaning that which people believe. One of the reasons that even Republicans and conservatives shy away from the Generalissimo Francisco Franco, well, he was a fascist. I see pictures of him with
A good fascist.
I see pictures of him with like Hitler and stuff, and so they immediately shy away, even though his methods and his tactics were effective in defeating the communists and protecting his people from world war.
And this is, okay, good fascist, because you're not supposed to say good fascist. All fascists are bad. But the fascists in Portugal, fascists in Spain, and some of the fascists in Italy, prior to the main event that is World War II, these aren't bad people. These are responses to uprisings, right? To socialist, communist uprisings, where the strong man comes in and goes like, no, we're not going to do that. Here, let me ask you a question. You're as up on current events as any man I know. Is Bukele a fascist? Bukele, is he a fascist?
Put it this way: if I get what you're saying, so is that actually how you say it, Bukele? I've always said Bukele.
Is it Bukele?
I've always said Bukele.
I said Bukele.
Bukele.
If we marry the three,
I'll put it this way: if you ask me, I wouldn't say he's a fascist. But if you asked a journalist, if you asked a communist, if you asked a Marxist, if you asked a Democrat, they'd all call him a fascist. Every single one of them. I wouldn't say that for a variety of reasons. No, notwithstanding the fact that he won his most recent election by, I think, one of the largest margins that anyone has in history, but also the fact that he is incredibly popular. Just, you can see it. You can see the massive throngs of people that come out to see him. And oh, by the way, massive throngs of people thanking him was also something that happened with Francisco Franco when he saved the country from the abject pit of hell that the communists were attempting to overachieve. And keep in mind, you can watch the Rojos in Spain. They were marching with the hammer and sickle. This was the first place that Stalin really tried, and you mentioned the uprisings that were going on around Europe. So, and yes, there were some responses, some which were completely reactionary, but there were also others that became very nationalist. In Franco's case, it was also Catholic. And so these were being done in defense of civilization, to the point where even the Pope came out and hailed General Franco as the savior of civilization.
This would have been Pius XI?
Yes.
Okay.
Or 12th.
Pius XII. Talking with Jack Posobiec and Joshua. Say that last name for me again.
Lisec.
Joshua Lisec. The book is Unhuman. When does it come out? When can you go unhinged?
Yeah, so this book that you're actually looking at right now is an unreleased book.
Okay.
We were able to, well, you mentioned Strongman earlier, so we strong-armed our publisher to do an early printing, because we told him, hey, we're going to have this huge captive audience with Turning Point Action. We're going to be up here. We're going to be doing all of this. Why don't we try to, go a little crazy here? And I know we're supposed to be the anti-communist, but do a little capitalism on the side and sell a couple of books. And so he said, fine, but on the flip side, he said, you guys have to finish that thing in time. And let me tell you something. There were some late nights.
4 a.m. nights.
Yeah,
we did get the first draft completed in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That is lightning. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit.
And honestly, the first publisher we talked to said it couldn't be done.
So you're with Human Events. You come on the scene in what, 2018? When did you get the
2016?
2016. You get the interview with Trump, right?
Well, I kind of came up during the Trump movement.
Okay. Before that, you're a military guy, right?
Yes.
So explain then to our audience out there watching, in military terms, how far advanced is this invasion? How far are they advanced, and have we sufficiently girded our ranks, or have we built the ramparts up? Are the ramparts built?
Well, to be honest,
you don't like that.
To be honest, if you want to look at it in a military perspective, the enemy's has broken through our lines.
Sure.
And the enemy broke through our lines a long time ago. They're in our backfield. In many cases, and our fields of effective fire have barely even begun to be set up. So your field of effective fire is, if you're creating defensive battle lines or any kind of battle lines, you want to make sure that you've got your artillery, then you've got your indirect fire, then your direct fire.
Okay.
And now, of course, this is a Navy guy talking Army terms, so I'm probably going to screw everything up here. So
Stonewall Jackson would approve. I think you're on good ground.
Stonewall will be all right with it, then it'll be okay. So the idea being that our indirect fire isn't reaching that, our artillery isn't hitting them, our direct fire isn't hitting them. It is only at the very late date of 2016 in terms of all this, and as Joshua had mentioned a little bit earlier, we were talking, this began 60 years ago.
Oh,
and
easily.
we've only just now, with Trump, begun to actually effectively fight back. And the way to fight back, by the way, is reciprocity. The way to fight back is to make them feel pain. You have to raise the costs. I know people get so upset when they say that. Oh, you mean go after people's family? No. No, we're talking about exact reciprocity. The iron law of exact reciprocity. It means simply this. If you are someone from the Biden campaign or the Biden administration who is going to put lawfare on President Trump, and you're going to declare, okay, illegal political expenses and expenditures in these payments to Stormy Daniels, okay, has the Biden administration or the Biden campaign ever committed any illegal campaign expenses? Let me think. In 2016, how about the Steele dossier and the Hillary campaign? Well, we're going to go after the Steele dossier and we'll open criminal investigations into that. How about the Biden campaign? Oh, wait, I remember 51 intel agents, which, going back to hypnosis, over and over, 51 intel agents, 51 intel agents over and over have debunked this. Well, it turns out that letter that was circulated was itself an illegal campaign expenditure, using their own terms, using their own rules.
It absolutely was.
And this is the best part. Do you know who set that in motion?
I think I do, but I'll let you say it.
Secretary of State Tony Blinken.
So you have...
So where's the criminal investigation on Tony Blinken?
Well, where's the criminal investigation on the Clinton Global Initiative? Did Bill Clinton get $300 million to go, or $3 million for 30 minutes to go speak to the Saudi Arabians? Or
why was it that the number one funder of the Clinton Global Initiative was Ukrainian oligarchs for all of these years, right up until, the invasion?
So you said our artillery shells are not hitting them. Direct fire. Are we getting them with bayonets? Are we hand-to-hand bayonets?
I think at this point, and Joshua, maybe you could answer, but I think at this point, the vast majority of conservatives, people get it, but I think there's still, maybe I shouldn't say vast majority, but there's still a vocal group of conservatives and classical liberals. We refer to them lovingly as the woke right, who believe that believe that fighting back is somehow wrong and that this shouldn't be done.
That's right. There's this idea that, and there was a Republican individual that behind closed doors, a candidate for office, I'm quoting, he said, "Principles before power." And that is exactly wrong.
He probably had a lot of power.
If you don't have any power, then you have no means through which you can enact your principles. What men like Bukele, what men like Franco, and we even add George Washington to the mix, is they have a father's heart. And a dad's got to do what a dad's got to do.
That's right.
And so that is the gusto from which UNHUMANS is written. But Jack and I, both being fathers of multiple children, we understand this, we feel this. There's not anything we'll do to protect our family.
Father's Day 2 days away.
That's right. When I interviewed Michael Foley about one of his books, he told a story about his when he was a boy, he was an altar server. And
I was too.
Or this priest came, a new priest in their diocese, comes to his parish, and his dad's is already kind of suspicious and skeptical. And young Michael Foley comes home and tells a story about how father wants him to meet him somewhere that doesn't have anything to do with altar boy activities. You know what Mr. Foley does? Gets in his car and drives to the church, and then knocks on the rectory door and tells the priest, "Come outside. You and I are going to have a talk." And this is what a real man does, right?
Yes.
This is what a man protects his family. He goes, "Let me tell you something. You ever talk to my son again about coming anywhere near him that is not in that sacristy, me and you are going to have a big problem." Well, and I assure you, you're going to be on the losing end, Father.
So he was a fascist, is what you're saying.
And this is what they talk about, though. So this is the difference between, we have to run. We have another interview coming up in just here in a minute, but I do want to make this point that this is the difference between how male confrontation is direct and female confrontation is indirect.
That's right.
So female coded is we must submit that report to the committee and the committee must then respond to the report. They must conduct an investigation to determine the veracity of the accusations, and the committee consensus will decide what the next action is. Whereas the male response is, there is a threat to my family and I am going to eliminate that threat.
That's right.
Immediately.
Okay, before you guys leave, you got to get to another interview. Talk for just a minute on the subject of how is it now in 2024, after being on this continent as Catholics since the 16th century, how is it now that it almost seems like there's an army of militant Catholics kind of being gathered? Do you see that?
I do, and I think it's twofold, and I think it's even goes beyond Catholicism, because you see this in you really see an awakening that's going on, reawakening that's going on with a few different groups, because there's been some mainstream groups, and I'll talk to the Catholic side because that's what I am, and that Charlie being evangelical, he's noticed it some on his side as well, though,
right?
That Charlie Kirk, that with the traditional Catholicism, saw a massive upswing in momentum because of COVID.
Sure.
Which sounds kind of almost incongruous. Why would COVID lead to a surge in traditional Catholicism? And it's because so many of those modern churches closed their doors.
They did.
That so many of those modern churches, they closed their doors. They said, you need to be socially distant. And I remember it. I remember going to a church, a Novus Ordo church, with my family on Sunday, and you know what it takes to get kids ready on a Sunday morning.
It's a miracle that it happens, literally.
Getting them in the car and all the rest of it. And we get there, and they said the church is full, the doors are closed. And I will tell you, it is like something broke inside my head. The whole point of church is to welcome people in, to bring them closer to the fullness of God for worship. A closed door is the entire antithesis of church. And for the sacrifice of the Mass and the worship of God and the Eucharist. And so I think that for myself and just having gone through that process and so many others, it was a huge wake-up call. There's something that's going wrong in the Catholic Church, that it needs to be fixed, it needs to be corrected, and then people started talking more about TLM, the traditional Latin Mass, talking more about the traditional church, and realizing that there is another path forward, and in fact it's a path that was always there to begin with.
You're friends with, you've been in company with Jim Caviezel of late, the actor. My co-host,
friendly. I don't know if we're friends quite yet.
My co-host for this weekend is Bug Hall, the actor, who turned it all in until 2019. Took a vow of poverty and is very traditional and is now completely off the grid. But he came here to do this, and I see these guys. Well, I see Caviezel putting himself out there, and I'm like, dude, you have everything to lose and almost nothing to gain. But then again, for the faith, he has everything to gain, right? So, hey guys, I know you're gonna get to another interview.
Really appreciate it.
It only took it took me 8 years of trying to get this guy here.
Oh, it was because you had Magdalene. Magdalene reached out. Magdalene Rose.
Magdalene. But she got in touch with your peeps, my peeps, and then we all had lunch, and then it's all great.
She's wonderful.
Together.
She's wonderful.
Well, I am so glad. Jack Posobiec, thank you very much. Joshua Shaw. Lisec. Thank you very much. Folks, I'm going to turn it back to the radio station. I want to thank Jack and Josh. Get to their next interview. You're speaking here Sunday.
Sunday morning, yes.
Correct. All right. Coming to Mass here?
Well, so I've got a Catholic event tomorrow, a breakout session tomorrow at 10. Then Sunday morning Mass at 8, and then I'll be at the Catholic Mass, and then I'm speaking at 10:45.
Fantastic. We'll look forward to coming out to the convention, and you can meet Jack and Joshua. Now, where are folks? Did they ship you a crate of these books? Are they here? We've
got a crate here for folks who are at the People's Convention, and they can also go to unhumansbook.com, unhumansbook.com. A signed copy, or if you just want to get a regular copy, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle copy, etc. And I'm told that the audiobook is also on its way.
Who read? You? Him?
We actually got an actor to do it.
Oh, okay. Yep. Fantastic. Hey, folks, thanks for joining us live here on the Crusade Radio Network. We are live at the People's Convention. Jack Posobiec and Joshua Lisec. I got it right this time. Thank you very much. God bless you. Mary keep you. And